Our group's presentation is measles or rubiola. Those who participated are Haley Gracia, Sarah Lewick, and Brittany Puckett. Etiology. The official name for measles is morbillivirus. It's part of the Perioxovirus family, and it's formally known as red measles or hard measles. The morphology is it is enveloped, and the genome is its non-segmented RNA. A little more about the genome is it is 17 to 20 kilo base pairs long. The linear arrangement of genes, in this case is 6, are separated by repeated sequences, a polyadenylation signal at the end of the gene, the intergenic sequence GAA, followed by the translation signal at the beginning of the next gene. Replication. Replication occurs in the cytoplasm and is very similar to influenza. However, paramyxovirus replication is resistant to actinomycin D. A large excess of nucleocapsids are produced in infected cells, which form characteristic cytoplasmic inclusion bodies. Reservoir. A reservoir is an organism or population that directly or indirectly transmits a pathogen while being virtually immune to its effects. Some of the reservoirs for measles are vertebrates like sea mammals, seals, and dolphins. However, the reservoir for measles is most common in school-aged children, with outbreaks occurring in spring and winter. The incubation period for measles is roughly 10 to 20 days. History behind measles. Measles is believed to have evolved from rinderpest, or a similar animal virus. About 4,000 to 5,000 years ago, when Babylonian cities grew large enough to support continuous person-to-person transmission. An example of this is the seal distemper. In the Arctic Sea, seal populations are large and dense enough to maintain the virus, which is sometimes exported to the Baltic or North Sea from those seals moving. Here it burns itself out and disappears again after an epidemic, since the seal host populations are not large enough to maintain it.
So there are a couple pertinent signs and symptoms that go along with measles. And the incubation period ranges from 7 to 21 days from exposure to the onset of a fever. And then the rash usually appears about 14 days after exposure. Symptoms include the fever that can rise as high as 105 degrees, inflammation of the eyes, runny nose, cough, and these small red spots with bluish white centers, as you can see in the right picture. Those are called Koplik spots, and they appear on the oral mucosa by the second or third day. And then the rash, which you can see on the left picture, appears on the face as tiny maculopapular lesions that contain both discolored spots of skin called macules and red raised areas of skin called papules. And the rash usually begins on the face and then it generalizes to the rest of the body, and that lasts about 4 to 7 days. Measles is transmitted from person to person by large respiratory droplets, but it can also be spread by the airborne route as aerosolized droplet nuclei. And infected people are usually contagious from days before until 4 days after the rash onset. So the droplet transmission, which is the person-to-person large respiratory droplets, occurs when a contagious droplet produced by the infected host are propelled a short distance through either coughing or sneezing and can come into contact with another person's eyes, mouth, or nasal mucosa. And then the airborne transmission entails the production of infectious droplet nuclei, generally 5 micrometers or less in diameter. So in contrast with the larger droplets, these droplets remain suspended in the air and can be disseminated by air currents in a room or through a facility to be inhaled by another susceptible host. Small droplet nuclei can remain suspended in the air for prolonged periods and travel significant distances. So with things like measles, if someone sneezes in the aisle next to you at the grocery store, because it has that airborne droplet nuclei and the currents are coming through the grocery store, it can transfer over to the other aisle and you can get infected from it.
Measles is treated by the symptoms the person has. Some of the treatments would be bed rest. This is sometimes done in a dark room to help alleviate photophobia. Another thing that is done is the individual can be given antipyretics and liquids. For children, they need to be kept isolated until rash disappears. Measles can be prevented and controlled through a few different means. The first one is receiving an active immunization. This immunization contains live attenuated viruses. It is a part of the MMR, which is measles, mumps, rubella, or the MMRV, measles, mumps, rubella, and varicella vaccine. This vaccine is given to children between 12 to 15 months and another one at 6 years. Another way to help prevent and control measles is proper hygiene. This can be done through hand washing or throwing away any tissues that are contaminated. If you have been exposed to measles, a gamma globulin can be administered. A gamma globulin is a protein created in the blood and acts as an antibody to provide a fast and momentary immunity to the disease. Measles lasts about 5 days after the rash appears. Complications that can occur with measles include croup, conjunctivitis, myocarditis, and respiratory tract infections. Measles can be dated back as early as the 7th century. People in the 10th century were more worried about measles than smallpox. There was a rapid decline of measles around the 1990s due to the efforts of making sure children were vaccinated. From 2000 to 2007, there were around 63 cases of measles a year. In 2008, this jumped to 131 cases. 90% of these cases were children who were not vaccinated.